Hey, this is David here. We're talking about how to improve your English speaking in the integrated learning system. This is a step-by-step guide, so we've gone over how to develop all of your skills together. We've gone over most of them, and now we're dealing with the speaking aspect. So you've gone through, you've listened to your audio and read the text. You've focused on learning the vocabulary and expressions, mastering interesting grammar points, practice your pronunciation, and you've even spelled and transcribed your audio to practice your spelling and writing. And now what I recommend you do is go out and speak to someone in your network. Now, I don't mean you have to do that within 5 seconds, but sometime during your day, go out and talk with people using the words and expressions and the grammar points and practicing your pronunciation as you talk with other people. This is something I did when I was learning Portuguese and French, and even recently, when I was learning French during the day, I would be learning and studying, and then at the end of the day, I would go out and actively try to speak to people in my network. Speaking to people that were already in my network and adding new people to my network. As you lose contact with people, it's good to keep adding new people into your network so that way you constantly have people that you can speak with. Now, we're not going to go into a lot of detail here in this video, but in the speaking classes where we go into how to build your English speaking network, if you've seen that, then you know we recommend you have 12 people in your network. And I recommend that you have 3 English students who speak your language. So that way, especially when you're beginning, you have people that if you have questions or doubts, you can ask them for help. Then I recommend you have 6 international English students, because if you speak only to people who speak your language, you'll be tempted to fall back into speaking your mother tongue. So by speaking with other people who are learning English but who don't speak your mother tongue, you'll be forced to speak in English with them. So you won't be tempted to always go back to speaking your mother tongue. You'll be forced to speak English, use it, and find ways to communicate and express yourself with the English that you already know. So it's important to have both kind of students in your network. Students that you can help and can help you, and also people who are going to force you to speak the language so you don't get lazy. All right? And then I also recommend you have a teacher, a tutor, someone who's a professional who can help you. Sometimes, even though you can ask other students, they might not know how to help you out or how to answer your questions. So if you have a teacher, a tutor, someone that you can talk to and remove doubts, it's very helpful. So I even did this myself when I was studying French most recently. I had friends who spoke English, Portuguese, who I could speak French with. I had students from other countries like Russia who spoke French, so I could only speak French with them. And then I also had a teacher, so when I would go to classes, I could practice and remove doubts with him, someone who understood the language thoroughly and deeply and could help me out. And I also had native speakers. I also recommend you have at least 2 native speakers in your network so that way you can practice with and remove doubts. And especially since they're not just students, if you speak with students, it's good for practice, but they're not going to be able to correct you if you're making mistakes. So by having the native speakers, they can actually correct you perfectly the way you want to learn to speak. I know initially this may be hard, you may be nervous about it, how am I going to meet native speakers, but it's actually fairly easy. 1, you could just hire them as a teacher or tutor. 2, you could find other people who are native English speakers who want to learn your mother tongue. So you could do an exchange where you help them learn your language, and in return, they'll help you learn English, the language you want to learn. So it's really important that you focus on building your personal English network. And the reason for 12, I've mentioned before, but I'll say it again, it's worth repeating, is because you don't want to speak to one person every day. They'll get tired of talking with you. They'll say, oh no, here comes that guy again wanting to practice his English. So if you have several people in your network, you can speak to 2 or 3 every day, and they won't get tired of seeing you. But you'll also be in contact often enough so that they won't forget about you. If you only talk to someone once a month or once a year, they're going to be like, who are you again? So you talk to them like once or twice a week. You keep that relationship going, you build it and deepen it, but you don't bother them by trying to talk to them too much. Now, obviously, if they become really good friends and you talk to them every day, that's great. But you don't want to bother people, okay? So that's why it's important to build your network and have plenty of people so that you can speak with every day. So you're going to say, David, what am I going to talk to these people about? Well, first of all, you could just retell them what you learned. What did you just get done learning in English? You studied the text, so you could just tell them, hey, I read this interesting article that said this, this, and this. I was reading this book, and it was an interesting story about da-da-da-da. If you're studying from the mini stories, for example, you can just retell the story that you learned. You don't have to say it memorized word for word, but just retell it in your own words. And try to use the new vocabulary words that you just got done learning. Try to speak with sentences using the grammar structures that you were just studying. Use the new expressions, make sure you're pronouncing words correctly. So everything that you read and you listened to, all those words that you learned, and you can put all of that into practice right away. And also, you can ask questions. So if you learned a new word, ask a question with it. So if your vocabulary word was abandon, for example, you could ask them if they know someone who was abandoned as a child. Or you could ask them if they know of a project that was abandoned. So that way you're using those words in talking and asking questions. And as you ask questions, when they answer you, they'll most likely use the same word or words that are related to it. So if you pay attention carefully, you can actually learn new words that you might not have known that are related to it. So as you're speaking about the words you learned, but you're also building your vocabulary and learning synonyms and other words that are closely related to that theme, which brings us to the next point, which is that you could talk about a related topic. So if you were reading and studying an article about health, for example, then you could go out and speak with someone about health. Ask them, hey, how's your health? Or do you exercise? Do you work out? And start a conversation in that way. If you read an article and you're studying about love, then go out and talk with people about love. Hey, who was your first love? Or if you want to get really personal, just say, hey, how's your love life? Well, obviously, if you don't know the person very well, you don't want to ask intimate questions like that, but you get the idea, okay? And then, of course, there's always the controversial topics like politics, religion, and soccer or sports. You can always take a side that's opposite what the other person thinks, even if you don't actually agree with it, just to generate an argument or a discussion about it, because then the person will get really heated up and they'll really get into that topic and discuss it and why they believe what they believe and try to convince you to think like them. So, obviously the idea isn't to argue with people or disagree with them, but it's just to get conversations going. So even if you don't actually go out and retell the same story or say what you learned, but if you talk about something related to that topic, you can still use those same vocabulary words and grammar structures and practice pronunciation that you were learning. And you may have seen the video with Junior's example, the interview I did with Junior where we were talking about this very thing, and he actually mentioned this example with learning vocabulary. When he first started studying with us, he would learn new words and then he would come and try to use those words in another sentence, even though he thought it sounded crazy. He'd be sitting there talking to me and all of a sudden he would ask me this crazy random question that didn't have anything to do with the topics we were talking about, but it was just a way for him to practice what he was learning. And actually, if you learn to ask questions correctly, even though it might sound kind of off topic or crazy, but you're still practicing and people know that you're learning, and it's just an interesting way to keep the conversation going. So even though you might feel uncomfortable or might think that you sound crazy, don't worry about it. People won't actually think of it like that. They'll just think that you're being sociable. So as an example, I have a friend who asks a lot of questions. His name is Gabriel. One day we were sitting around the table for lunch. There were several people there, and he kept asking lots of questions like, what do you think about this? Or where would you like to go? Or if you could live anywhere you wanted to live, where would it be? And it just sounded very natural, very sociable, very friendly way to keep the conversation going. So whenever you ask questions, listen to what people have to say, tell them what you think, exchange ideas, and then ask more questions just to keep the conversation going. It might sound kind of awkward at first to you if you're not used to doing this, but as time goes on, you'll become better at it and you will sound more natural and more sociable, and people will find you to be a very friendly and personable person. Okay, so those are a few tips on how you can actually take what you're learning and go out and actually use it to start speaking with other people. So I hope you've enjoyed this video on how to improve your speaking skills in the integrated learning system. As always, if you have questions or something wasn't clear, you can leave a comment below. Let us know what you're thinking so we can get back to you in future videos. Also, if you have an interesting story that you'd like to share about any of these things, interesting speaking stories that you have when you've gone out to speak with other people or building, or how you built your network, please feel free to share that information. We love hearing these kind of stories. And don't forget, feel free to share this video with your family and friends, people who you think would enjoy it as well. We appreciate you helping us spread the word. So you have a great day. In the next video, we're going to talk about evaluating your progress in each of these 8 steps, and then the integrated learning system recipes, and finally, what you can start doing to get going right away. Okay, so I'll see you then. Have a great day, and bye-bye.